Okay, everyone, welcome to another of my Zoom Rachel Speaks with conversations. And today I have Ed Ottley, and today is the second in a trilogy of interviews, conversations really, about the subject of law. And as I said in the first interview with Dayton de Jour, which was a couple of days ago, that you may or may not have seen, that until you've actually got involved in the legal system, the court system, if you've never had any experience of it, it's easy for it to kind of take you by surprise and you to be completely unaware of what to do and how to respond. And so this, to me, this education about law and the difference between legislation and law and our lawful rights is really, really crucial, because when you are aware of the system, if it does take you from left field, which it often does, then you kind of know what to do and you know what to say. And this is very much the case with you, Ed. And I'll come to you so you can give a brief overview of your story about how easy it is to feel that you're a law-abiding citizen going about your business, to suddenly be thwacked and I'm assuming here, you'll have to explain if I'm correct, but I'm assuming some kind of job's worth finds you falling foul of their rules and regulations and decides they want to make an example of you. And that tends to be how the system works to suppress and command and control. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ed, so you can give a little brief overview of your personal story, what happened to you, and crucially, why you decided to assert your lawful right to a trial by jury. So I'm going to hand over to you so you can fill in the detail.
Right, yes. Well, it all started, just to let people know, I'm a managing agent, although the managing director run my own property management company. We don't own the properties we look after, but we're the managing agents for leasehold residential apartments where we look after the communal areas. So if your roof goes or there's a problem with a lift or the gardens and the cleaning, we deal with all of that, everything outside your flat. Now, we took on a building built in 2007, so quite a modern building, in where we're based, actually in Ipswich, it was fine. We didn't take it from new. We took it in about 2012. Took over from another managing agent, the residence management company, because many of these buildings have a residence management company where the owners of the flats appoint their managing agent. So the owners appointed us to be their managing agent, and all went well. We carried out regular fire risk assessments, because that's where I'm going with this story. It was to do with a fire authority inspection that led to this sort of shocking event, really, for me. But the backdrop to it is the Grenville Tower in 2017. Obviously, a high rise of 26 stories or so. And the fire service, if everyone remembers from the news, didn't get a very good press on that. In fact, they suggested that people should stay put in the tower block, which is wait that your apartment is fine for you to wait for the fire service to arrive, stay in your flat until told to leave. But of course, it came out in the report afterwards, or the investigation into it, that people staying put, it wasn't a good idea, that actually evacuation. So the fire service were very much chastised and obviously didn't feel good about this. The media were all over it. So shortly after that, I was out with friends over a weekend and got a phone call on mobile saying, this is the fire service, we're inspecting this building. And I said, well, hang on, Saturday afternoon, really, I need my block manager to be with me, our development manager, because he's got all the keys. How about, could we delay till Monday? Because that would be most effective, really. But I was on the phone for about an hour and a half where they were sort of really trying to bully me to go, and almost suggesting that we need to evacuate the building immediately. And I sort of pushed back politely. And then in the end, we managed to arrange it for Monday.
Okay, let me just quickly ask you a question here. Was there any evidence, complaint? Was there something that triggered this, or was it just a routine inspection?
Actually, you're rather right there. I should have mentioned that prior to this phone call, the building had been bracketed as high rise, although obviously at the time we didn't know all the technical terms. It was before the legislation had caught up as well. But suddenly this building, which is only 5 stories at most, with a penthouse, a duplex, so it's 4 stories really, was suddenly in the high rise bracket, which is over 18 metres. This is between 11 metres. This is about 14 metres. So not massively high compared to a tower block. But we didn't know that at the time. So my development manager was called out by the fire service. Thank you for getting me straight on this. And said, right, we need to test the metal cladding at the top of your building. There's two stories at the top on the duplex bubbles had metal cladding, whereas it was terracotta cladding, clay cladding elsewhere. It went for testing at the government testing centre and came back as, hadn't passed. It was flammable, it were. So they phoned then that weekend and said, we've heard from the testing. We're very concerned. So, as I said, we arranged it for Monday, where we had development manager, myself, building control there, and a member of the fire service. We walked round, and actually they said, and building control, who were involved in signing off the building originally, said, no, everything, you're fine. Just, we're happy. We don't need to evacuate this building. We're happy.
Okay.
But just sort of investigate further. Obviously, there is a question mark over the metal cladding, so get some more expert view on that. We updated our fire risk assessment, but with our current fire risk assessor. But they then did say, we don't like your fire risk assessor. The fire service said, he hasn't got the sort of qualifications we're looking for. So we recommend you get another one. So we got another at the end of 2017, even though we'd updated it with this risk of the cladding into it. We were told, no, get another one. So we got a member of the Fire Institute who had been an ex-fireman. Tell me if I'm rambling, because I've got to...
No, it's fine. Sorry, I was just distracted by someone through there.
Yeah. Anyway, he then said, okay, yeah, I'll do your fire risk assessment. So he came along and did one.
And you paid this guy?
And paid this guy, to do it.
Because this is another point with authorities that I understand from talking to a lot of people is like with social workers and stuff, they will say, oh, we need a report and your person isn't good enough, but here's this person over here and you need to go to them. And it's all money into their system and their alliances and allegiances. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is as I understand it.
Yeah, well, there definitely is at the moment, I think, a bit of a, what's the word? Fire engineers and fire risk assessors are on the ascendancy, whereas the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors are sort of lower down the pecking order a bit now. So there is a bit of a struggle going on. And the fire service, it all comes out further along the line. So they also recommended another company for an external wall survey. And so we contacted them, paid them $2,600 up front, we were only used to at the time paying £300 for a fire risk assessment. So that seemed like a lot of money to do that. So we went along for a couple of years with this chap doing our fire service, our fire risk assessment every year.
Yeah.
But where it all started to unravel, if that's the right word, is that in 2019, we still hadn't had the external wall survey, although we'd been chasing. We've also got to put it into, so we've gone a year really where they hadn't come up with that. They said that they hadn't been able to contact building control, the architect. They hadn't got the sort of plans and everything they needed. But then in sort of mid-April, the fire risk assessor said, I'm resigning. I feel you've misled me regarding this building. I didn't realise the cladding was high risk. You've given me wrong information. So I'm resigning and I'm invalidating the fire risk assessment. So that's when it all started.
So it's like a hot potato which you sort of threw over.
Yeah. Suddenly we're left with no fire risk assessment, told that they were all invalidated anyway, told that we apparently lied about what we'd done. Okay. Even though our original fire risk assessor, we'd updated it with the cladding. Now, this is where the trial by jury, so I've got to somehow move us along, really.
Okay, but I want to ask you, so what was the point where you knew that you were sort of in the frame? Did you receive a letter or a phone call, or like where were you as opposed to your company? Where were you individually put in that kind of spotlight of you are the person at fault? Because this, as I understand it, it wasn't your company, it was you individually. Yes, so I'm really interested to know that.
Yeah, so anyway, this guy, we got a new fire inspector along who was, in my opinion, far more aggressive than previously, was finding fault with the building in a way that, that hadn't come up before. And he sort of worried. It was a stay put policy there, but he was concerned about that. So I looked back at the original building design plans. Also, there was an alarm in the common area. So I took the view, hang on, I can't sleep at night in a way after Grenville, knowing that everyone's concerned about this stay put. I'll change it back to what it originally was, which is evacuate.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did that unilaterally based on intransigence from others not doing anything, but kind of put in a position of, hang on, I'd rather sleep at night than not. Now I've got this extra information that I didn't have before. So anyway, we then move into 2020 where, and also along the way, we had a notice of deficiencies from the fire service, and we'd always done what they'd asked us to do. For example, in the car park, they said to fit collars, fire intumescent collars there. We did everything. We always did what we were told to do. That was the point. The fire riskers told us to do something. We did everything that we were told to do. The fire service at that initial meeting said, you need to do this. I said, we did it. Okay. So everything we did. Now, so it came as a shock when we got this new version of the fire service. Now, in 2020, we got an enforcement notice against the residence management company, but being the managing agents, we needed to deal with that. And that's where I was particularly in the frame, because one, there was the lockdown at the time.
Right.
So it set circumstances as well, a lockdown.
So you were the managing director of this company.
Yes.
And so it wasn't the owner, they put it onto you as the managing agent, you personally responsible, as opposed to having limited liability as a director, which one would normally expect.
Yes. Now, the reason it's a set of circumstances, again, the director of the residence management company had recently moved to New Zealand. So he was still the director. All the other owners were sort of hands off. So no one was really, and at that stage, it was hard to know where this was going. And also with the lockdown, I thought, well, I need to hit their deadline. I didn't know about common law at the time.
Yeah.
I need to hit their deadline, so I'll try my best to fill out everything they want, address their concerns in the information. So I did that. And then they, of course, came back and said, this is where the story starts, really. It said, no, we're not happy with that.
Okay, so I'm just going to just pause it here, because just to say, this is a really important point, because it's a bit like when the police say, would you like to come in for a voluntary interview? And you think, well,
Yeah.
I'm completely innocent, so yeah, I'll come in. I've got nothing to hide, or yeah, I'll fill in your form. And so it's like the first domino. This is someone else has explained to me. It's like don't let the first domino fall. So the first domino can be something quite innocent sounding, like we'd just like to send a social worker in to see little Billy. Is that okay? Well, I've got nothing to hide. Of course it's okay for the social worker to come in. So now you've opened into this, you've engaged with the authority voluntarily, innocently, and the challenge that I'm just pushing this in because it's a really important point about watching for this first domino. Because the minute you started engaging and you start filling in the forms and start being compliant, you're drawn into this world, and it's just an important point to watch, which is why I asked you, what was the first thing?
Very important point, that enforcement notice. But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, that then you're part of the process, and throughout the lockdown, they were sort of saying we're investigating. I sort of then, still in the mode of, I'm sure we can sort this out. I'm not used to any of this at all.
Yeah.
Just thinking that, they're there to help. It even says in information that, and during the trial, actually, the fire service said, we're here to help.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, this is a really important point, Ed. It's like, this is the mentality, generally speaking. Well, the police are there to help, the social workers are there to help, everyone, and we're all on the same side, but it's really not the case.
No.
It's a really important point. So thank you anyway. Keep going.
Yeah, so I then wrote to them actually three times at least in 2020 saying, look, can we have a meeting? I think if we had a sit-down meeting just to sort out what you want with this, because they were going on about the fire risk assessment, it was mainly that the fire risk assessment didn't take into account the cladding. They were upset about the evacuation as well, very upset about that, and about the new evacuation policy, and probably it came out we're unhappy. Later on, it comes out with the fact that we sort of resisted the building being evacuated.
Okay.
See what I mean? So there were various points there, but they refused an interview on each occasion and said, you're under investigation, so you can't have an interview. And then you think, well, hang on a minute, if this is such a dangerous building, you've got powers, and this came out in the trial as well. You sort of say, well, hang on, if this is so dangerous, you've got trials to evacuate anyway, regardless of what we're saying. You can put in an alteration notice as well and tell us to get the cladding off immediately.
Yes.
Anyway, that didn't happen. They just said we're investigating them. And so they were effectively using investigation as a means to just go after us and the residence management company rather than solve the problem. Surely you put the building right first. Anyway, despite all that, in 21, we managed to find, because you can imagine lockdown, it's difficult. A lot of people weren't working properly.
Okay.
So that is an important circumstance. But we also had other fire risk assessors we'd used that we felt were not up to standard that we wanted. Luckily, in 21, we found a high quality fire risk assessor. But at that time, the fire service arranged another inspection, the same inspector, sort of mid-21. And, we said to him, look, we're taking on this new fire risk assessor. We've had the lockdown. It's been tricky, but we've been looking all this time, and we want to get this done properly. As we said in my letters, I want to sit down with people who know what they're talking about to get this done. So he then was very non-committal and said, "Oh, just have a look at a list." Then went away. We then got our new fire risk assessor in. He looked at the building, did say yes, that is a real danger, that metallic cladding.
Okay.
Therefore, what we recommend, we believe you're right with evacuation. That's absolutely right, but you just need to add some heat detectors in individual apartments so that they're properly linked to the.
Okay.
They had alarms anyway, but this was more belt and braces. Also, with the new alarm, we'll link it to the fire station, which is only 5 minutes away from this building anyway.
Yeah.
And they'll immediately the alarm goes off. Not only will the residents know, but the fire service will know immediately.
Okay, cool.
So that was all completed by the end of 21.
Right.
And because it was such an important thing, we wouldn't have the money to do it now, or never would do it now. We actually loan the development money to actually put the new fire alarm in.
Okay.
Get it done fast.
Right.
We then gave the fire service progress reports throughout 21, right up to the end. So it became a bit of a shock when in sort of September 21, they summons the residence management company and said, right, we're taking you to court.
Okay, now really key here. When you say they summons the management company, was that you individually or was that a corporation?
No. So this is the residence management company, who are the owners, the corporation, as it were. But as being the managing agents, we are professionally taking control of it. But this is where I've got to tell you a bit more. I've gone in a bit too deep with all this.
I mean, I know it's this. I'm just, I'm obviously we've got viewers on here who want to get to kind of the meat of this and the drama of this, but these details are quite important because we're talking about who's got authority and who's got responsibility and who is the lawful, who is the person. Is it a corporation? Is it a person? Why is it you as opposed to your co-directors or the, this is a really interesting point because...
well, this is a precursor to the main event. This is a run-up to really what we need to talk about. Essentially, at this stage, I didn't know anything about common law. I was all legal.
Yeah.
It was against Ipaxis, so it wasn't against us, our management company. It was against the residents. But being the managing agent, it sort of came on us. Oh, hang on, what have you done? We're off to court.
Okay.
What's happening here? So the director of the residence management company was suddenly involved as well.
Okay.
Although we tried to involve him, but the fire service had refused an interview with him, which seems illogical, but anyway. Therefore, I, at that time, was and going along with him, no common law experience. Right, how do we deal with this? Because we're up against the fire service. We're up against a public authority, very powerful. And it's a private prosecution, by the way, so it wasn't. So it's very much in their interest.
It was civil, not criminal. Is that what you're saying? It was a civil case, or was it a criminal case?
I would say it's sort of civil at this stage because it's to do with a company, a residence management company.
Okay, so it hadn't progressed into being a criminal matter, just to clarify.
No, not really at that stage.
Okay.
So I thought, right, how do we outdo them? Right, I'll get a solicitor. And I'll get not only a barrister, but a King's Counsel barrister, or a Queen's Counsel at the time. So a Queen's Counsel costs more or less twice as much, about £6,000, which is obviously a hell of a lot of money. And then the solicitor. Now, the reason for mentioning this is that I went into it thinking, cool, we've got a Queen's Counsel, this will be brilliant. And I built up all this evidence as to, this is a crazy situation because we've tried our best to sort this out, set of circumstances. We've inherited a building that's got this cladding problem, but you can't just take it off immediately. Someone's got to pay for it. You've got to think, you've got to be you've got to organise all this. And also legislation was moving along and it hadn't got to the stage where we are now, where the freeholder actually or the developer should pay for it. Okay. If you're taking it down. So anyway, I got these people involved, but the barrister did take me by surprise. We sort of had off-the-cuff Zoom meetings where he'd be out of court at Northampton or somewhere, and he was in his sort of pinstripe suit, but he sort of had a Coke can in hand and was kind of very casually. I'd formally given him evidence and broken it all down through the solicitor, but he was quite informal and using language like, "You've been a naughty boy, Mr. Ottley." All right, hang on a minute. But the evidence is such that, I believe we'd win this case. So to shorten this, it all came down to the barrister, although put forward a very good case, I thought, the barrister, said, no, you've got to plead guilty.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop here, Ed, just to pause, because this is another really important thing to realise, and for viewers to realise, because I've been through this, where you get a solicitor on board and they say, oh, we need to really get a barrister, and then they give you a list so you can get a junior barrister for X pound an hour, and then you get a medium, or you get a super duper one for thousands of pounds, and you have to sort of take your choices. And you truly believe that they are acting for you because you're paying for them. But the truth is they're not. They are there to uphold the system. And they are part of the system. And this is a massive point. And it's something that you don't realize until you're in it. Or actually, sometimes in retrospect, because when I look back at my particular situation, I realize now, oh my goodness, this guy, I was paying him a shed load of money. They were never on my side.
That's right.
Really important point to realise, which is why I would never engage a solicitor or a barrister. I would always represent myself. Just wanted to drop that one in.
Exactly. So with this one then, and the Residence Management Court being not common law either, went along with it, and they're paying in theory. So we all end up at the magistrates' court, and
now hold on. This is another point. So, did you consent to the jurisdiction of the magistrates' court?
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is two parts here, so I've got to get the important.
Oh, all right, okay. Because there's so many points here about how it's tried.
Now, so this is me as an ordinary legal person, if you should put it that way.
Yes.
Not understanding anything, just trying my best for the residence management company, getting the best legal advice, getting everyone on board,
and assuming that the magistrates' court is the normal process and procedure, and not even questioning, presumably, that, hold on, do I agree to the jurisdiction of the magistrates, and do I really understand what a magistrates' court is, which is really just a rubber stamp, a guilty verdict that some authority has already made. And that all they're there to do is rubber stamp it and sentence you or fine you. That's a really important point, I feel.
Yeah. So where we are with this, of course, in pleading guilty, you've pleaded guilty, haven't you? So he did his bit, pretended to talk to me in court, that sort of thing.
And so the barrister advised you to plead guilty. And I had the same thing. I was advised to do a plea bargain guilty to a lower charge, which I knew I was innocent of, but I did it because I thought it would end the matter quickly, because they'd actually taken my two younger sons away from me. And in my case, and it was like, if you go for a full trial to prove your innocence, that's going to take a year, and you won't see your children for a year, so you better agree. It was like a complete blackmail.
Exactly. So, right. So at the end of it, he said it's all Home from Home's fault in the, I've given away our company name now, in there. He then, at the end of the court case when they were sentenced and fined quite a considerable amount of money. Coming out of court, he said, "Oh, sorry, I threw you under the bus." He's using this kind of language.
Wow.
And I thought, hang on. And then, of course, the solicitor quietly says, saying, "I'm hoping this is the end of the matter, but I've got a horrible feeling that they might be coming after you next and your company." It's almost as if they know
so
already.
That's really interesting.
So just to hurry it on, 12. Well, it was when that was early. The trial there was sort of January, February. In September 22, the charges landed on our doorstep, and this is where it all gets underway for the trial by jury. So they came after us. So 14 months after their inspection, when the building's supposed to be, and another year after, saying they wouldn't speak to me. So here we are. So the charges arrive against me this time as a director.
Now, how did these arrive, these charges? What is the format? Is it a letter? Is it a court papers served on you, a summons or something?
Yes, and someone from the fire service arrived in the office and wanted it signed for.
Okay, so they wanted to serve it on you. So you could at that point have not accepted the service.
Exactly. But I still didn't know about common law. But now this is where I'm moving on. So I get this in. So against me and the company, criminal, you could go to prison for 2 years. So obviously you can't imprison a company, but high fine. You start off at the magistrates, but it's definitely going to the Crown Court. Now, I did initially speak to the barrister and the solicitor. But the barrister said, "Well, hang on a minute. Well, I'm not sure, Mr. Ottley, you'll have to... Well, I think you should plead guilty." And I said, "Well, no way I'm pleading guilty, or my company. Now it's for us. No, we've got strong evidence here that we're not." He said, "Oh, well..."
And sorry, I'm going to just put in another point here, which is really important and crucial. For you to be a criminal, there needs to be willful intent.
Exactly.
And from what I'm gathering from your story, that there was no willful intent.
No.
And that's a really important point to be a criminal, the court needs to prove, because you're innocent unless proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and to be a criminal there needs to be willful intent. I think it's called mens rea.
Yeah, you're
it's
right.
like a mens rea, and that's a really important point. And like in my case, there was no willful intent, so I wasn't a criminal. And even though I pleaded guilty to this criminal charge, I wasn't a criminal because there was no willful intent. It's really important. And so if you plead guilty, they need that guilty verdict, because to prove willful intent is a very high bar.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm not going to interrupt anymore, Ed. Over to you.
Yeah, because I'm aware I want to carry it all in this.
And we'll keep going if we need to. Don't worry.
Go off a bit. Well, essentially, so he then says, "Oh, well, Mr. Ottley, I think, my fee, well, over 100,000, probably 150 to coach you for about 150,000. Also, by this stage, I'd already paid 12,000 anyway with the solicitor and him being briefed. So we're already up to 12. At that stage, I came across common law. Right. I was sort of looking at your posts and Dean of Buxton and reading around the subject anyway. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, you're not going to get a fair trial here. I can see that. We're going down the plead guilty route. No way. Now I know about common law. I'm going to look into this. So spoke to you and Dean of Buxton. And realised, hang on, I sacked the solicitor and the barrister. No, I'm doing this myself, representing myself. Gets a bit emotional at this stage.
Oh. So just to preface this, so Dean of Buxton, I just want to just big up Dean of Buxton while you kind of regain your emotional equilibrium, Ed. So Dean of Buxton is an amazing crusader, shall we say, to teach people their lawful rights. And one of his really key things. And he was my partner for 18 months, and I learned so much from him. It was just the most incredible teaching about our lawful rights. And most of us have absolutely no realization or clue that we have a right. If anyone accuses us of a criminal offense, we're innocent unless proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and we have the right to a trial by jury. We have a right to a trial by jury, no matter what the system might say. Oh, we're going to phase out trials by jury. They can't. It's enshrined in the Magna Carta. It is a lawful right. And I wish I'd known at the time I was going through mine. You don't have to consent to a magistrate's court or a judge's court. I require a trial by jury. Not a jury trial, a trial by jury. These are the magic words, because basically we have the right to be tried by our fellow man and woman, i.e. a jury of 12 people independent from the situation. And the crucial thing about a trial by jury is that jury is not only deciding whether you're guilty or not guilty, they can also set aside any legislation in arriving at their verdict. And this is why it's so important and crucial. I just want to put this point in here, and I'm sure you're going to reiterate it.
I'm going to blow my nose before you do that.
Because this is the thing, that legislation, government, this is why trial by jury is so important, because it has the power to ignore any legislation. So, for example, the guy who pleaded guilty to selling a Cornish pasty during lockdown and got put in prison aged 68 and had a heart attack a week later. If he'd known about his right to a trial by jury, rather than agreeing to magistrates, he could have said, I require trial by jury, and any jury, all 12 have to agree. So it's a really high bar. Which is, see, it's totally ridiculous to send a 68-year-old man to prison for selling a Cornish pasty during lockdown, innocent, let him go. And so when I read stories like that, and that guy, he was sentenced to prison and he had a heart attack, and the judge knew that he had heart problems, didn't care, sent him to prison, and within a short while he died of a heart attack. And if only he had known, if only he had realized he had a common law right, I require a trial by jury, he would not have been found, I believe, that a majority of juries, 12 people independent, would have looked at that and said, ridiculous nonsense, thrown it out, and he would have walked free. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching about law, and I know Dean is, and that's why I'm interviewing you, because this is so key. And as we've said, until you've been through it, until you've had the police arrest you or some trumped up charge, you don't realize the implications and how it can escalate. So anyway, back to you, Ed, to complete.
Yeah, it was very hard. Yeah. So anyway, so went down the common law route, then went to the magistrates. I require a trial by jury. I don't understand. I'm commonly known as date of birth. I don't know, etc., etc. I wish to stand where I am. All these sort of tactics to keep out of the jurisdiction of the court. In the magistrates' court, as we could expect, they did all get a bit hot under the collar, and the clerk, who looked past retirement age, was suddenly talking about bail of £40,000. At that stage, the barrister, because I was up against the barrister and all the fire service, who turned up with brightly polished shoes and etc., looking very good in their uniforms and everything. So he actually said to the clerk, the barrister said, "Well, hang on, you can't do this. No, it's."
They really don't like it. They really don't like it, do they? Any of it, no. The ushers, the judges, the barristers, they really do not like it when you say, I do not accept the jurisdiction of this court. I require a trial by jury. And yes. they will try and hook you. And it's really important, because I know this is an important point.
So it was then, okay, Mr. Ottley, you can leave. I'm leaving at my own volition.
Yeah.
So left the court and then prepared for the Crown Court. because that's what moves on from the magistrature in the
Yes.
Crown Court. Did the same thing there. It was to start with a more junior judge, and she did say, "Oh, I'm not sure you're fit to plead anyway, Mr. Ottley. You'll have to have a psychiatric test, or you'll
Oh,
have to have a
wow.
mental assessment."
Now,
Um,
actually, now this, sorry, Ed, because this is another really important point, and I know this from various kind of conversations I've had. This mental health card is a card that is often played by the system if you start to question or if you say, I do not understand. It's like the Mental Health Act, where you can be sectioned. I think you can be sectioned for like 28 days or something. That's a really slippery banana skin. And we have a good friend, he's dead now, but he was actually sectioned under the Mental Health Act. And once you've been sectioned, it's quite difficult to get yourself out of
yeah,
a mental health institution. So that's a real underhand thing that but it's a card that they play. So it's really
yes,
important to be really to hold your nerve and to be absolutely unemotional and logical, clear, and not allow yourself to get angry or into fight flight, but just to be really, really to hold the calm of your nervous system, because it's very easy for your frontal cortex to close down and the amygdala to kick in, and you go into fight flight, and then you lose it. So it's an important
yeah.
point. Anyway, back to you.
That's it. So went away from there. Actually, I did get my own assessment, found my own company to assess me, who said I was fine. So
Good.
I then sent the assessment to the court. So then we go to next hearing at Crown Court. Just really saying, look, I need a trial by jury.
I
Um,
require.
sorry,
I
I used the word. I
require.
did use that. I said I require a trial by jury. Went through the usual things. And this, okay, Mr. Otley. So they kept adjourning.
Right.
They did do things like, you enter court, say the third time, and the judge isn't there for a while. Anything to unnerve you, really. Another time,
Yeah.
I was ushered in, and they were talking to someone in prison on a video link with barristers about when he was going to likely to get bail, and I was ushered in to hear this. So again, it's a bit, trying to frighten you.
Yeah.
Then they'll try and give you documents at another hearing, and so trying to bring you into the jurisdiction. So it's really a case of, I can't accept such a lovely gift or something like that. So this kind of thing, but it was toing and froing, all sorts of tactics, really to unnerve you, really.
Hmm.
Instead of the judge asking you your name, the clerk might suddenly ask your name. So there's all sorts of
Just
ways.
to ask a question, was Dean of Buxton there as your Mackenzie friend, or were you alone?
I was alone in the hearings, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I went through, obviously, I had support from family. My wife came along. So anyway, eventually, with all these hearings, there were 12 actually in total. We got, okay, Mr. Otley, you will have your trial by jury. Thank you. But we haven't got enough tables and chairs in Ipswich. What about King's Lynn? So we'll have to have another hearing for that. That was probably hearing number 9, something like that. So they kept changing the venue. I don't know, maybe to distract again. But eventually, it was set, the trial date. Actually, the trial date had been set some months before, so in a way, but they were still trying to catch me out, I think, with the hearings. But with a week to go to the trial date, they moved it. So I'd got all my witnesses together. I'd done paperwork, because you have to do some paperwork building up to send it to the court. They
Yeah.
moved it a week. So it meant one of my witnesses was on holiday, and my mother-in-law had just died. There are all these life things. It's sort of arranging a funeral, etc.
Yeah.
And you suddenly, so they wouldn't know. They'd have none of it. You can't, but you've only given me a week. You've changed. I was all set for this date, arranged around it. Oh no, you're now a week later.
So it's
And
all
not in
to
this.
destabilize you. And I had exactly the same thing where you think, right, it's
Yeah.
going to be over on such and such a date, and like, oh, we've delayed, we postponed it until 6 weeks more, and it's all
That's it.
done to destabilize you. Yeah.
So we ended up in another town, their Crown Court there. So they took us to another town, said, oh, we can't be in this one, and you'll have another judge. I was given the highest judges, the highest one in Ipswich, and another judge, high judge. So anyway, it was it's about half an hour, 40 minutes down the road. So it was a case of everyone. They empaneled a jury of 12 people. One good thing trial by jury as well is, lots of people supported me and came along, and we were given a little room to consult in the breaks. It was a 2-week trial.
Oh, wow. So long haul.
Yes. And it was a case of me obviously I hadn't done it, but cross-examining. And it's learning, really. Okay, so you could almost do with it, doing it more often in a way. Not that I'd recommend it. So we had the jury. Impressions are that the judge interrupts a hell of a lot, and you've got to question to get the evidence out. You've got to question it during your cross-examination. You're only allowed to question, apparently. Although I went off message quite a bit with my opening speech as well. I addressed the jury, and I was interrupted quite a bit, but I did say what you're saying as well. Has there been any harm, injury, or loss?
So this is a really crucial point. It's like, who was the victim? Because if a crime has been committed, who's the victim? And I've done exactly the same thing in court, where this is on speeding. It's like, I have a right to face my accuser. So they put someone in, like this policeman, or he's not even a policeman, he's the guy who holds the speed camera. I'm like, have I caused you harm, injury, or loss, Mr. Bloggs? And the judge, oh, you can't ask that. You can't ask that. But it's a really important point, because to be a criminal, there needs to be a victim. There needs to be harm, injury, or loss. It's a really important point.
So I put it to the jury, and I was trying to educate the jury in a trial by jury rather than a jury trial.
Yes.
So the trial by jury, I said to them, right, you're here to judge the facts, the evidence, and the law, at which point the judge sort of, hang on, and the law. I judge the law. Carry on, Mr. Ottley. And I said, really, you're here to look at this case through your consciences. In your conscience, you know right and wrong. There's the Bible, there's the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not cause harm, etc., etc. And you know what right and wrong is. So in this case, there are lots of technicalities, fire safety, but you're here to see whether a crime has been committed.
Yeah, good.
And also in your conscience, right, in examining your conscience, sorry.
No, it's okay. This is a big thing.
In touch
going
with your
to court.
emotions. I'm getting in touch with my emotions, but
it's a big thing going to court. I mean, this is such an important thing. It's actually a very spiritual thing. Actually,
in the run-up to it, I started reading the Bible.
Right.
Because basically, trial by jury is all about natural law.
Yes.
Being in touch with creation. As you're saying, Rachel, you've got God, then you've got the common man, woman, Parliament, and other agencies are down the pecking order. It's actually common man and woman who are in charge.
Yes.
And the idea of trial by jury is that they judge you through their consciences in a straightforward right and wrong way.
Yes.
Have you been malevolent? Have you planned a criminal thing? Is there a victim, etc.?
Yes.
So I was trying to do this. I also said, if you find that the legislation is an ass or isn't up to scratch, that really you're finding that it's unhelpful, it's actually nothing to do with the legislation, is out of kilter with right and wrong, then you're welcome to discount the legislation altogether and what's called nullify. And that's in preparing for trial by jury. I suddenly became very, very interested in reading about it. But in fact, the senior judges don't want, when they've tried in the past to get rid of trial by jury, they actually don't want to get rid of it, because one judge said it's the lamp that shows freedom lives.
Yes.
So.
And just to let you regain your equilibrium again, Thomas Jefferson, he's famously quoted as saying something like, trial by jury is the only mechanism known to man to keep a government in check.
Yes.
And that's why it's so crucial.
Yes, it's, as you say, keep governments in check. Without it, as the judiciary know, you have more of the top judiciary anyway, you have more and more legislation, and before you know it, you're in an authoritarian society. We
already are. I mean, that is the truth of it. We are in a command, control, totalitarian, authoritarian society. I just a little off-piste, I noticed that they've totally taken BitChute down now, the video platform BitChute, where Dr. Vernon Coleman, all of his videos were hosted because of this Online Safety Act, and they've just decided to withdraw from the UK market because they just don't, I guess the directors don't want to fall foul of the Online Safety Act, and therefore they've acquiesced to this command control authoritarian censorship, essentially, to actually remove their platform from the UK completely. And so everyone who was hosted on BitChute has lost all of their content, essentially, their video content. It's outrageous what's happening.
Definitely, yes. So it's getting that over to the jury that that they had every right to discount legislation, and also that if one of them didn't like, if only one of them dissented and said, look, no crime has been committed, then you go free.
There's reasonable doubt, in other words. If one person has got a doubt, then beyond reasonable doubt. So it has to be absolutely 100% unanimous.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had heard the story and used it, that if you put a mouse in a box, then put the lid on, then you put a cat in with the mouse, put the lid on, come back, say 15 minutes later, the time has elapsed, open the lid and there's no mouse, then you think, well, hang on, a crime's been committed. The mouse has been eaten by the cat, that's a crime. But if you take the cat out and there's a hole in the box, then you've got reasonable doubt as to, actually the mouse could have escaped, or any number of.
Yes.
But that's reasonable doubt there. So if you have any reasonable doubt at all, then you then should not, go. You should dissent, i.e. But in practice, of course, the jury, they're taken away into a room, each in between witnesses being. There are sort of downsides. The judge does very much throw curveballs in. For example, I had a very good witness, a major surveying firm in London. The judge just kept interrupting all the time.
Yes.
And then our development manager was on the stand, never done it before, but the judge said, I want to talk to your witness before we call in the jury. I'll address you. Before you give your witness account, may I say that you may be prosecuted as well if you start talking,
Oh,
about
so he was trying to
this.
nobble and use
Yeah,
fear on the guy.
that's right. And it did have the effect. He did then go to jail. Really, it was sort of difficult to kind of
Oh, I mean,
resurrect him.
it's just this is the thing this is what I was kind of alluding to in the beginning. It's like until you've actually been through it, it's
Hmm.
actually quite shocking and astonishing the lengths that the system will go to. Uh, they're not really interested in justice. They're really interested in getting the verdict that they want, that the
Yeah.
system wants, because they need to make examples of people, as we've seen a bit like with the ritual humiliation of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Yes.
They need to find some people. Oh yeah, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Yeah, okay, we'll make an example of him. And Lord Mandelson, we don't like him. We'll make an example of him, and then put the spotlight on them. They take the hit, and everyone believes that yes, we live in a very just society. It's actually deeply Masonic what's
Oh,
going on.
that's right. Yeah, they're definitely out to get their verdict. But I suppose there are a lot of good things with trial by jury as well, where you find out what really went on because you put them all on the stand. Then you find out that actually the fire risk assessor, before resigning or a couple of days before, had actually phoned the fire service.
Ah,
Is meant to is obviously, I suppose, being an ex-fireman, but he's suddenly phoning without telling us. Then with his resignation email, he blind copied in the fire service.
oh,
It turned out that the a fire chief who he'd higher up senior person who he'd phoned was seconded to headquarters in London and was really part of this new wave of where governments were going to start funding prosecutions of firms. It was a sort of so we being a small firm with no legal department,
easy
were
picking.
easy pickings. It seemed so things come out in court. People lose
Mm,
their cool as well. That
mm.
one thing I did notice, the barrister had got them very well scripted. They were word perfect, which I realise is important in a way. In thinking I should have really got my witnesses word
There is
perfect.
a thing called witness training, isn't there? Where if you're going to testify,
Yeah.
they train. Yes, it's yeah, very sneaky.
So, but then so you find out information. Interestingly, that again, the fire risk assessor, it's his wife, by the sound of it, who kind of made the decision as to whether he was. So they don't seem as professional as they, you know, it comes down to the kitchen sink almost that they have a family conversation and decide whether he's resigning or not. So he then came out and said that he disliked the car that our development manager drove. It's amazing what comes out, all sorts of prejudices that may add up to things.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
so,
Edwards, I'm kind of tempted to sort of hold it there because
yeah,
before you tell us what actually happened next, because you're speaking at Dean's event on in
exactly.
London on Sunday, 24th May, and I'd really love people to come along to support Dean and you and to learn and to hear what happened next.
Good idea.
So don't tell us now.
No, no.
What happened next? What did the jury say? What was the verdict? I really feel like it's important to actually keep our video audience here hanging slightly, because to me this is
Great.
absolutely fascinating, and the subject of law in years ago, and in fact I trained in tax law. I just thought, oh, it's very dry and it's dull and it's boring, and I'm just not interested. But actually, when you start getting interested in law, and particularly if you've been through the process yourself and you've been to court or you've been arrested or you've been caught up in something, it's actually incredibly fascinating. And when you start
Mm,
looking at some of the famous, I know Dean is a big fan of the William Penn trial, back. It
Yeah.
was one of the most famous trials by jury back in the time of, I think it was King George or someone, who basically they passed legislation to say you couldn't gather. It's very much like COVID. You couldn't gather to have a religious meeting in groups of 7 or more, unless it was Church of England. So of course they were all Quakers, all of the kind of founding
Yeah.
fathers that eventually went to New England, and William Penn actually went on to found Pennsylvania. So he was Quaker and deeply religious, and real Puritans of the Old Testament, I guess, or the Bible, basically, put it like that. And they stood against the king and this legislation, and asserted their right to a trial by jury, or William Penn did. And so that is a very interesting trial about, and also how the judge tried to exhaust the jury and not let them have any refreshments and not let them have any food, and to try to get a guilty verdict. And they found William Penn not guilty. And so basically they overturned this legislation. So it really is a very spiritual thing, actually, to walk through the trial by fire. It's like a bit like a trial by fire. And in fact, I think actually that justice used to be, like in the olden medieval days, it was trial by ordeal, to see if someone was guilty or not guilty, because it's like, it is a very spiritual thing to actually stand in your truth. And I just want to end by saying this, that when I was going through my little ordeal, actually a lawyer contacted me, or someone who's very spiritual, but they had a legal training. And this woman actually said to me, and I didn't actually really land it powerfully until later, until after it was all over, but she said that karmically, it's very important from a kind of spiritual karmic point of view to never, for example, plead guilty if you're innocent. And when I look back, I realize now that I should have held my ground, and I should have said, no, I am innocent, and I therefore I cannot, in my conscience, plead guilty to something that I know I'm innocent of, no matter what the system tries to use against me to almost blackmail me. Because looking back, I realize now that had I said, no, I'm innocent, and yes, if it takes another 12 months, that so be it. Because actually the Crown Prosecution Service would have collapsed. I believe that it would have collapsed their case, because they would have not had a justification to keep my children away from their mother for a further 12 months, having put me through. Because if you truly believe in your innocence enough to say, I require a trial by jury and I refuse to take a guilty plea, even if it means I can't see my children, it's like they know that you're innocent if you're prepared to walk through that fire and to represent yourself and to assert your right to a trial by jury. So these are kind of principles, these are deeply spiritual principles about how to hold your truth, hold your light, and walk through the false matrix and the pantomime, and to walk into court to speak your truth in this panto where you've got the judge and his wig and his gowns, and collapse the illusion, because it's the linchpin of the false matrix. I've come to this conclusion that this facade, this pantomime of this box, this square cube that you go into, a bit like when they put you in a police cell. It's a square cube with no windows to nature. It's a construct which is deliberately designed to be terrifying, and it's almost like a trial by fire sort of thing, a spiritual trial. So I'm going to end by congratulating you, Ed, for standing your ground and for walking through, having the courage to walk through that trial. And I would really encourage everyone to come to your event, Dean's event, in London on Sunday, 24th of May. I'm going to be there. And so it'd be good to see you again. And I just wanted to really thank you, Ed. So I'll just hand over to you for any closing thoughts and words. And as we've been going, for over an hour now.
Yes, I'm happy. Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you very much, Rachel. And yeah, it was very much a crucible. I actually mentioned that it was the crucible, like the play, The Crucible. It was very much as what's happening with your interview almost. You get your emotions. And you fashion a spirituality out of it, but also you're helping democracy. If everyone in the jury, if we can expand that and people realise that actually we are the democracy, it is the common man and woman who can overturn all this legislation that's threatening to enslave us or authoritarian. So I went from being almost feeling, obviously very shocked, but then learning, as you were saying, with common law, I suddenly realised the bigger picture. Hang on a minute, This is our constitution, this is our democracy. So if we can all get it, there's still power in the people, as you said, the linchpin.
Yes, and then it becomes our duty.
Yes.
It becomes our duty to stand and to question. And I think actually judges respect that, in my experience, when you actually go in and say no.
I believe they do. I'm, respectful of the judges. The good thing with the jury is it gives them an opportunity not to be hemmed in with their public oath, their idea that they have to toe the line, the government line, the local authority line. The jury gives them an excuse to examine their consciences and to see through the system themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another important point: is there's supposed to be separation of power between the police, the courts, and the government.
Yes.
So there's supposed to be three very distinct bodies that are not in cahoots. And increasingly, my observation is that the police are in cahoots with the courts and the government, and it's all in cahoots. And so that's a very dangerous situation, which is why it's really important for us we the people, to question all of this legislation, all of this bullshit legislation, and not just acquiesce and go along with it because we want a quiet life. It's really important for us to say, actually, this is really important, and it is my duty as a free man, free woman of the land, to stand and to question and to assert my rights, my lawful rights. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And so that would also be if you were called to be on a jury. You've actually got a very important role. So whether you're in court because you've been summoned there, asserting your common law rights, pushing back, or you're actually in the jury, you're important roles, as you say.
And just another thing on that point is, if you think of the number of people now who are not signing up to the electoral roll, because I believe they draw the juries from the electoral roll. So a lot of us are actually saying, I'm not going to register on the electoral roll. I don't believe in the system. I don't want to consent to the electoral system because it's completely broken, the first past the post system. Like Keir Starmer can get elected on less than 20% of the people of this country and then start asserting his authority, and when over 80% actually didn't vote for him. So a lot of people are not agreeing to go on the electoral roll, and so therefore it's interesting that the people who are questioning the system then aren't invited to or called to do jury service because they're not on the electoral roll. So you're getting this diminishing pool of people who presumably are compliant with the system, and maybe they don't question. They just go along with it because they've always gone along with it. They've always registered and they've always voted Conservative or Labour. Oh, I voted Conservative last time, they're crap. Let me vote Labour this time. Oh, they're crap. I think I'll go back to voting Conservative. But they're both cheeks of the same arse, you know. And a lot of
Yes.
people are just opting out. So this is another slight danger as well with jury trial, that you could actually get to a
Yes.
point where everyone that is left in the system believes in the system and is kind of not questioning the system, you know.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
Anyway, but we're in interesting times, and my honest opinion and the way my observation is that this system is crumbling under the weight of its own corruption, and it will fall, and it will be replaced by a much more fair and just way of being on this planet. But trial by jury is a really important linchpin and tool for us, a right. It's not even a tool, it's a right for us. It's really important for us to assert that, no matter what Keir Starmer may say about, oh, we've decided to abolish trial by jury. They cannot do it. They have no authority. No government has the authority to remove that right of the people. It's a really important point.
I agree.
So cool. Anyway, and I'm sure that Dean will and all of you speakers at the event will articulate that in much more detail and powerfully. Definitely. So it's going to be a fantastic day. So I really recommend anyone watching this, if you're interested in law, please do support that event. It's being organised by Dean of Buxton. Amazing lineup of speakers. Amazing venue, which is a secret venue, because obviously these things have to be, because if they go live, then it's like closed down quite often, because the system does not want people knowing this information. So it's really important that we wise ourselves up into these lawful rights. Cool. So lots of love, Ed. Thanks for coming on. And I just wanted to also give a plug, because Rog and I are doing a separate lawful rights event, lawful rights and remedies event in York on Saturday, the 9th of May. I'll put both links below. So whether you're up north or whether you're down south, there are some amazing events coming up that you can support and come to and really, absorb this wisdom. Okay, lots of love, Ed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rachel.
On the 24th of May.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.